All right, let's jump right in. We're going to break down a really powerful idea from Morgan Housel's book, The Psychology of Money. We're taught to think that wealth is all about the big house, the fancy car, but what if the real value of money, the thing that actually makes us happy, is something else entirely?
So let's kick things off with a real head-scratcher. Since 1955, the typical American family's income has more than doubled, even after you account for inflation. Objectively, we are way, way wealthier than our grandparents were. But here's the wild part, we're not any happier.
In fact, it kind of seems like all this extra money has come with a catch, a big one. According to Gallup, people in America report feeling way more worry and stress than the rest of the world. So we're richer, sure, but we're also a lot more anxious.
And that brings us to the big question for this whole explainer. What is going on here? If more money isn't making us happier, what's the missing piece of the puzzle?
This is what we can call the happiness paradox. More income, more stuff, but the happiness needle just isn't moving.
So what is the real value of money then?
Well, the book offers an answer that's actually pretty simple, but honestly, it's profound. A while back, a psychologist named Angus Campbell wanted to figure out what truly makes people happy. He looked at everything you'd expect: income, where you live, your education, you name it. But he found that the single biggest predictor of happiness wasn't any of that. It was much simpler. It was having a strong sense of control over your own life.
And that right there is the heart of it. The best thing money can buy isn't more stuff. It's control over your time. It's freedom. The ability to wake up in the morning and say, I get to do whatever I want today. That, right there, is the highest form of wealth you can have.
Now, theory is one thing, but let's see how this actually plays out in the real world. We've got a couple of amazing stories that show this from two totally different angles.
First step, a story about the pain of having no control. The author, Morgan Housel, tells this story about working a high-paying internship at an investment bank. The money was awesome, but he had zero, and I mean zero, say over his own time. His boss owned every second of his day. He realized that doing something you love, but on a schedule you can't control, can feel just as bad as doing something you hate. He was out of there in a month.
Okay, now let's flip the script completely. Let's talk about entrepreneur Derek Sivers and how a surprisingly small amount of money bought him an incredible amount of freedom, long before he ever made millions. So how much money are we talking about here? How much did it take to completely change his life? You might be thinking a huge number, but it was just $12,000. That's it, 12 grand. When he was 22, he scraped together that much from a minimum wage job, and that was enough. It was enough for him to quit, cover his basic expenses, and just go for it as a musician. He said the millions he made later, they didn't really change his happiness much. The real freedom, the life-changing moment, was back when he was 22 with that tiny little cushion. Okay, so this is the confusing part, right? If having control over our time is so valuable, and as a society we have more money than ever, why does it feel like we have less control? Well, a huge piece of the puzzle is how work itself has changed. Think back to the 1950s. Most work was physical. You went to the factory, you did your shift, you clocked out, and you went home. Your time was your own. But today, so many of us are knowledge workers. Our main tool isn't a wrench, it's our brain. And you can't just leave your brain at the office, right? It's always on. We're thinking about work on the drive home, during dinner, when we wake up stressed out at 3 in the morning. It feels like we're never truly off. So all of this really points to one thing. We need a new definition of wealth. One that's less about the numbers in our bank account and more about the control we have over our calendar.
And if you want some real perspective on this, who better to ask than people who've lived the longest? A gerontologist named Carl Pillemer did just that. He interviewed 1,000 elderly Americans and asked them for their most important life lessons.
And what they didn't say is mind-blowing. Get this. Not a single person, not one, said that happiness comes from working as hard as you can just to buy more things. Nobody said it was important to be richer than their neighbors. Nobody said to pick a job based on how much it'll pay you down the line.
So, what did they value? Well, things that all require one precious resource: time, quality friendships, being a part of something bigger than yourself, and spending quality, unplanned, unstructured time with their kids. As one of them put it, your children don't want your money, they want you. Which brings us right back to the single most important takeaway from this whole idea. If you remember one thing, make it this: controlling your time is the highest dividend that money pays. Period. It is the best return on investment you will ever get.
Okay, so with that big idea on the table, let's bring this home.
Let's make it personal. Let's talk about you. Seriously, just take a second and think about that. If there were no obligations, if you had total control, what would that day actually look like for you?
And now, take a hard look at your own financial goals. Are they geared toward buying you more things, a bigger TV, a newer car, or are they geared toward buying you more control, more freedom? Is your money buying you stuff, or is it buying you time?
And so we'll leave you with this last question to really chew on. It's not about how much money you have. It's about what that money does for you. Is it paying you in stress and longer hours? Or is it paying you in freedom? What is the highest dividend your money is paying you?